Marconett, and today is episode 1 of the road to vegan. Aren't you excited? It's going to be a lot of fun. Veganism. I call it the road to vegan because that's kind of how it happened for me and my wife. We co-own a company called Hella Phat Vegan, and we never thought that we would be eating only plants. So I want to use this opportunity to debunk a lot of myths that could possibly be out there about maybe how extreme people are if they're vegan. There's a couple other myths out there, like nutrition-based ones. And I'm here to tell you that, again, I never thought this would be me, dude. And I like to say that we follow a vegan lifestyle. And I think that's important because if you start to say that you are a vegan, which a lot of people do, which is not necessarily that bad of a thing, but if we start talking about it in a way where it's a lifestyle, then it doesn't become an identity. And I think we're noticing, especially in politics right now, that there can be some issues that come up with taking things on as an identity. I think the place to start is that we're all human beings. I think that's the only real identity that we can truly hold to be true. Truly hold to be true. You know, words and whatnot. So again, my name is Sean, and my background is mostly in neuroscience and psychology. So I'm not a board certified nutritionist by any means. So any nutrition information that comes up today, please take it with a grain of salt. But I do know a lot about how people operate, how people make decisions, hence the preamble about the team mindset. And so today specifically what I want to talk about is promoting a vegan lifestyle, of course. But we have a mascot for the podcast, and her name is Bella. I'm going to introduce her in just a second. More on that then. Now we're going to talk about some vegan news. There's a lot of things happening in the news currently that has to do with plant-based food, but also global warming, etc. And how we can influence these different aspects of our personal health, the health of the planet, and the health of animals. And I think those are the big 3 topics that most people who live a vegan lifestyle tend to gravitate toward. And you know, it's funny when you tell someone, the joke is, how do you know someone's vegan? They've told you in the first 5 minutes that you've met them. I'm guilty of it, right? But when it comes up in conversation, you know, it's interesting, and some people do ask you, what are your reasons for being vegan? I don't think you need just one. I think, in fact, it can strengthen your own internal conviction if you identify with all 3. And again, those would be personal health, health of the planet, and health of animals. So we're going to be talking a lot about those 3 topics. We're going to talk a little bit today about how to vote with your vegan dollar. And then because of the coronavirus, I really don't want to talk about the specifics of it, other than how interesting it is that a lot of viruses, not just the coronavirus, in the past, say, 20 or so years, and even before that, have come from the fact that we farm animals for food. Now, I don't know the specifics about whether or not some places have to do that for nutrition reasons. My thought is they probably don't, but I don't know the details, so I'm not here to say everybody needs to go vegan right now. I don't know if that's realistic. What I am here to talk about, though, is some unfortunate human health-related issues that come up from farming animals. So isn't it interesting right now, the whole vegan thing? It's very timely. So we're going to talk about all those things. So first things first, we do have a sponsor today. My wife and I co-own a company called HellaPhatVegan.com. You can go there to check out more information. Right now we have some recipes we're selling locally, and hopefully we'll be selling online soon. So I'll definitely let you know about that. We make seasonings. Right now we make 3 different seasonings. We make a chicken bouillon, we make a chicken breading, and we make an egg flavored seasoning. And we're hoping to get those again online very soon. Go ahead and check it out. Hella Phat Vegan, fat P-H-A-T. Yeah, P-H-A-T. Okay. Bella. She is a Shiba Inu, and she's about 10 years old. She's almost 11, actually. She's our mascot because of a couple reasons. She's had a relatively difficult life. She's had glaucoma, which means by now she's totally blind. So we had to remove, I'm looking at it right now. We had to remove rather, both of her eyes. And then one of her eyes is actually a prosthetic, which is really cool. And we had that installed. We had it installed. She's like bionic now, dude. We had it installed in San Francisco at a ophthalmologist, a dog ophthalmologist. This lady was insane. She was very good at what she does. I believe she's retired now. But the long story short is she has a prosthetic, and then she also has her real skin over her eye, which is wild, which allows her to also have her second eyelid still. And she basically can emote, as strange as that might sound, unless you're vegan and you're watching this, and that might not sound so strange. But the reason why we chose to go that route for her was, again, because she can still kind of give you those like eyebrow intonations with her face, so to speak. It's really cool, man. And so if I've edited this correctly, there's going to be some videos and photos maybe of her up over here to my right. And so you can see her. Her name is Bella. She's a Shiba. She's a little underweight for Shiba. And, you know, the other reason she's our mascot is because we have her on a completely vegan diet. And I know it sounds crazy, but I haven't seen any research, but I've heard that wolves in the wild can be up to 70, maybe even 80% vegan already. And that only some smaller percentage is coming from animals that they kill. So it's really interesting. It's almost like maybe how humans were back in the day in the wild. And so we're going off of a protocol, Dr. Pitcairn, and again, if I've done this right, you'll see the book right up here. Dr. Pitcairn has a book not only describing how you can make a plant-based meal for a dog, but also for a cat. And I know there's a lot of controversy around cats eating a vegan diet and how could that be possible? And aren't cats carnivores and don't they need meat? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I go with the experts. So Bella's on a vegan diet and we're following it to a T. She's on a bunch of different supplements as well, probiotics, etc. The list is massive. And we make our own food at home. And of course, my wife Sarah started this, and now we do it every week or so. And her energy level is up. Her joints seem to be doing really well. Whenever she's outside, she acts like she has way more energy than she did when she was on an omnivore diet. And so, I don't know, there might be something to it. But our dog is acting fantastically with it. Her fur has come back even thicker than before. A lot of benefits to it. I know it sounds crazy, but check out the book, Dr. Pitcairn. The exact title, I might have a link to it here. Maybe. Dr. Pitcairn's Complete Guide to Natural Health for Dogs and Cats. Check it out, man. Very cool stuff. That is Bella. So let's move on to some vegan news. So there's some interesting stuff happening in the news lately around veganism, living a vegan lifestyle. There's a new phone that came out called the Oppo, or I guess the company's name is Oppo, O-P-P-O. Let me pull up the link here. And they have a phone where one of the options has a vegan case on it, meaning vegan leather. Now, veg news. So 100% vegan, but I don't know, it begs a question. Are all phones vegan if they don't have some kind of a case on it like this? Now, in the past, I've had Apple phones with cases that were real leather. Obviously, that wouldn't be vegan, but if I hadn't bought the case for the phone, wouldn't that be a vegan phone? And if I buy a case that's made of plastic or some other material, wouldn't that also be vegan? So how they're branding it and marketing it might be a little facetious, because I bet you could get a fake leather case for any phone, and then it'd be a vegan phone. So this could be a marketing ploy. I don't know. I haven't really looked further into it, but check it out if you guys are curious. Now Chicago, let me open that up. Chicago has almost banned horse-drawn carriages. I think that's really interesting. And in fact, when we were living in Toronto, my wife and I, a little over a year ago, we were right across the street from a place called Fort York. And down that road, I believe it was Fort York, the road, you would see, it was either Front or Fort York. Anyway, you would see cops, police officers on horseback coming by twos, and they'd be just trotting down the road, you know? And at first it's like, oh, that's pretty cool, right? How often do you see that? We're from the Bay Area of California originally, which you don't really see police officers on horseback. And then you start thinking about it a little more deeply, and it's like, well, isn't that using an animal maybe not in its intended purpose? Now, look, I've had discussions with people who believe that, especially folks who are very religious, who believe that all animals are for the use of humans, even the consumption of them. And to one person in particular said, I couldn't believe it, that because of that, because their purpose is for being used by humans, why would you want to rob them of that purpose? You should use them for food, for coats, for whatever. Oh boy, right? That could be, look, a couple hundred years ago when resources are scarce and you're maybe living off the grid because you have to live off the grid. By the way, this backdrop is our tiny house. We actually do live off the grid. It's pretty crazy. And right now it's kind of cool because the whole coronavirus thing, it's actually fairly handy. So if anything happens, we're pretty stocked up, prepped by design, you could say. But you know, back in the day when you needed resources and maybe you had to be an omnivore, like think about 2,000 years ago, or even further than that, let's say 10,000 years ago or 15,000 years ago, before society as we know it. You know, maybe you had to use animals in that way, and maybe that's where that came from. I would argue, and this is really my global point about living a vegan lifestyle, is that we now have the technology and the global supply chain, which is a little under stress right now because of the virus, but we have the global supply chain and the technology to live a vegan lifestyle safely. You know, again, maybe back in the day we had to use animals, and that was a belief that held true because, well, we're on team human, right? So we need to use everything at our disposal in order to be healthy and happy. And in that way, perhaps using animals was almost a necessity. I don't know, but I could see that argument. These days, it just isn't the case. I don't actually believe that animals are here for human purposes only. It's a very human-centric way of thinking. But hey man, what do you think? Do you have a horse? Do you view a horse as simply no different than a dog? I mean, we have a dog, right? We have a pet. So it's just a really interesting conversation. And it's a point that I'm going to bring up later. And the point is really, how far do you take this? How far do you take living a vegan lifestyle? And we'll touch on that a little bit later. So Chicago, by the way, is very close to this. I guess it hasn't fully passed as of a couple days ago, but maybe it's already passed by now. Here's something really exciting. Cadbury, I believe they're a British company, they are releasing a dairy milk bar that is vegan. And you know, in my estimation, it's tough. I love chocolate, first of all. My wife can attest. I'm always looking for chocolate and reading the labels, make sure it's vegan, blah, blah, blah. And it's usually dark chocolate because of the whole living a vegan lifestyle thing. But so Cadbury is, and I've had vegan milk chocolate before, and it's fantastic. I mean, it shouldn't be much different than using some kind of plant-based milk. So as you can see here, Cadbury Vegan is the title, and made using 100% plant-based milk. Dude, that's huge. That's awesome. I can't wait to try it. And it's a point we're going to bring up later, but I'll bring it up now just briefly. It's an interesting thing because Cadbury also makes non-vegan milk chocolate. And again, it's to the point of, you know, how far do you go with voting for your vegan dollar? My wife and I talked about this a couple days ago, and it was really interesting. How far do you go insofar as, is buying that vegan chocolate also giving profit to a company that makes profit from regular milk, meaning their other products aren't vegan? So where we landed, and I think she's right on this, is that you have to vote with your dollar. And even if the company who's making a product, even if their other products aren't vegan, but they do make a vegan product, you should vote for that with your dollar. You should purchase that because that will tell them that they should be making more of it. Even if you run the risk of giving profit to a company who in other ways is not acting in a vegan way, right? It's really complicated, man. But the point is, like, where do you draw the line? And I think after talking to her about it, I'm now of the mind of, and this stuff changes rapidly, right? The beliefs, they change rapidly. There's no vegan Bible. And so I think I'm at the point of, you know, yeah, we go to A&W up in Canada here on Vancouver Island, and we buy burgers with plant-based materials, meaning they serve burgers that are beef, traditional beef, but they also have plant-based ones, like Beyond specifically. They use a Beyond burger. And we were so thankful because now we can take road trips and go to the A&W, go to the drive-thru, and get a plant-based burger when we're outside of, quote, normal society where there's more plant-based options. So it's the same argument because A&W also serves beef and chicken, real stuff. But should that hold you back from buying their plant-based option? It's a really personal thing. And I just love Beyond Burgers. So, but we're going to talk about Beyond in a little bit too for other reasons. Let's move on. This is just a point of interest for me. I didn't realize it until recently, but one of my favorite athletes, Lewis Hamilton, who's arguably, right now at least, the best Formula One driver. And Formula One is a highly competitive racing series where there's millions and millions and millions of dollars spent developing these very fast race cars that go over 200 miles an hour. It's insane. They're basically upside down airplanes because they have like so much aerodynamic downforce. Anyway, he is vegan. I had no idea. And this is actually a push that's happening in a lot of different sports. I don't know necessarily if it's for reasons of saving the planet or animal rights reasons, but it seems to be more so for personal health, because what they're finding is actually your recovery time after exerting yourself in these athletic endeavors, your recovery time can actually decrease, and athletes are always looking for decreasing recovery time because it can give them better outcomes when they're playing sport. A plant-based diet can decrease the time it takes for their body to recover, and the idea is that because animal-based proteins introduce more inflammation into the body that the body then needs to take care of as compared to a plant-based diet. So the body can then focus more on repairing the muscles themselves rather than dealing with getting rid of the inflammation caused by the animal-based proteins. So it's really interesting stuff. There's more information about this on a really good documentary. You've probably already seen it, but if you haven't, it's on Netflix. It's called The Game Changers, and it's all about this exact topic. Check it out, especially if you're not vegan. This documentary might tip you over the edge. Not to say you need to go vegan today or tomorrow, but it might open you to the idea of going to live a vegan lifestyle, if not only just for personal health. And then my recommendation, if you do want to do that, and I'm developing a course around this actually, is that you take it slowly, step by step. You know, if you wake up tomorrow and you want to throw out all of your non-vegan items, I don't know if that's the best way toward success. Now, some of you might disagree if you're already vegan. You know, I did it, you know, I threw out all my stuff that wasn't vegan, you might say, and it worked for me. I don't know if that works for everybody. And I think a more realistic approach, and we'll talk more about this in other episodes, is to do it in a step-by-step process. And that's actually how Sarah and I did it. Sarah in particular, my wife, she went from a regular omnivore diet to a pescatarian diet, and then to a vegetarian diet, and then to a vegan diet. So there were roughly, say, 3 to 4 steps in there that she took, and I was able to see her do this. I had already cut out gluten. I had already cut out dairy when we met. And so I had already understood what a deletion diet takes, and I'd had some good success from that. I'd dropped a bunch of weight and was feeling much better. Essentially, I think my gut was getting healthier. And so I was able to follow along with her and eventually go vegan too. And it seems to work. I've been vegan. She's been vegan a little bit longer than me, or has been living a vegan lifestyle longer than me. And I've had some hiccups here and there, and we can talk about that in a future episode. So I haven't been perfect about it, but let's say I've been 99.5% on a vegan diet in the past 2 years. And yeah, I've noticed massive, massive changes. And as of the beginning of this year, it's been nothing but a purely vegan lifestyle. So I'm happy to say that it's finally clicked in my head, but it takes some time. You know, it takes some time, and then you have stress comes up in your life, and you have other issues that might come up in your life, and those can kind of derail you sometimes and make you want to crave other things. And maybe you have some folks in your life who are eating these other things and it looks delicious. And dude, the point is, oftentimes these non-plant-based food items, like regular ice cream, like a regular cheeseburger, sometimes you can still find them to look delicious. In fact, sometimes, you know, I'll look at a regular pizza and be like, oh my God, it's so hard to find good gluten-free vegan pizza. It's so hard to find. And if it's easy for you to find, please let me know. Drop me a link. We're on Miyoko's cheese now. That's a huge game changer. If you make the pizza yourself, it's probably way easier. The Daiya frozen cheese, or frozen pizza rather, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's gluten-free. It's also vegan. But yeah, man, sometimes I look at regular pizza and I'm like, I miss it a little bit. But now, these days, it's not enough to bring me over to eat it. And I think that's the difference. So moving on, speaking of Miyoko's, her cheese is awesome, by the way. If you haven't had it yet, I highly recommend it. She's out of Petaluma, California, and her cheese is phenomenal. Now, this is not an image of what she's coming out with, but here's a couple images of what she is introducing. Sliced cheese. So the truth is, her cheese right now is quite expensive. I don't know in US dollars, I've forgotten, but in Canadian dollars, the cheapest option is like $12.50, which US would be around $9 to $10. It's not cheap, but the quality is incredible. So you do get what you pay for. Now, these slices I've heard are going to be $4.99 US. I don't know how many slices, but as soon as this coronavirus thing gets all wrapped up, she's actually slated to go on a grilled cheese tour where apparently everything's going to be free. So definitely try to figure out where she's going to be with that. And I'm excited to try her free grilled cheese that will be vegan, and because again, her cheese is phenomenal. And that's another thing that we've found, Sarah and I, about this vegan lifestyle is finding a good cheese substitute has been difficult. And Miyoko's, in our opinion, or at least in my opinion, is the closest I've found so far. All right. This is interesting. Hugo Boss. Hugo. I believe German. Doesn't matter. Hugo Boss launches its first vegan-approved suit. I'm smiling because at first glance, it's like, well, if a suit is cotton or made out of plant fibers or synthetic fibers, wouldn't it be vegan? Now, the subtext here is, after I looked into it, that apparently PETA has a certification, and let me pull up exactly what that is. PETA approved vegan certification for clothing. So they have their own guidelines as to what would constitute a vegan suit and what wouldn't. And the short answer would be any animal-based products, be it dyes, be it some kind of stuffing, Wool, a wool suit, obviously, it's from an animal. It's not going to be vegan. But a cotton suit, and this one apparently is all natural and created in Europe. So you can feel good about being vegan and wearing this Hugo Boss vegan approved suit. I think the price point's actually pretty reasonable as well. I think it was, here it is, 575 British pounds. So for a Hugo Boss suit, you know, I don't know what their suits typically range. This is more of a linen looking suit, so more of a casual looking suit. Looks pretty awesome, dude. I'd probably wear it. What do you think though? What do you think? A vegan suit, is it necessary to have PETA approve things as vegan in order for you to feel good about buying them? It's not a bad idea. Is it always the case that these PETA approved suits, after reading more of the details, it's a promise that the company makes? I don't know how much oversight PETA has on the manufacturing process of each suit. Are they certifying it? Are they making sure that all these materials are in fact vegan? I don't know how deep they go with it. But what do you think, man? What do you think? Is that a cool thing? I think it's probably a good step forward. Is it too much bureaucracy if they have to go in there and vet all the different products? Is it simply a certification that you get based on telling them where you get your different raw materials from? I don't know the details, but sounds like a good step in the right direction. Hugo Boss. Okay, so this is interesting. I thought that most British food is not vegan. And in fact, I think you can argue that that is true. However, I have heard that London is actually one of the biggest vegan hotspots for vegan food. Yeah, man. So I thought this was interesting. A vegan pie, in terms of like a British meat pie, wins gold medal at British Pie Awards 2020. And they're quoted as saying, "It's always a thrill to be recognized as one of the UK's best pie makers." I think that's a big deal, man. Now, I'm not British, but I have heard that the Brits love pies, meat pies. Have you ever had a meat pie? They're really interesting. I'm not a huge fan. I had them, I think, once. Now, in fairness, it was not a store-bought pie. It was a homemade pie. And it was at the home of my buddy's, I forget, was it his cousin or something like that, who is from the UK. And we stayed for 2 weeks in a town called Aylesbury. It was pretty awesome. Got to go see Formula One testing at Silverstone. That was amazing. That was back when Fernando Alonso was driving for Mercedes. Or McLaren, rather. So meat pies, vegan pie, you know, it's incredible how much different things you can make vegan now. And that's actually part of the focus of Sarah and I's business, Hella Phat Vegan. We make plants taste good. That's one of our slogans. But yeah, we make a chicken-based bouillon that tastes just like chicken bouillon. So you can have chicken soup, and it's the flavors of what you would flavor a chicken with. And that makes it taste a lot like chicken. It tastes like chicken. So British meat pie, a vegan one, wins the award. I thought that was pretty awesome. Good Food Institute, let me pull up the link here. And now we're here. 41% of US households now buy vegan milk, according to the Good Food Institute. By the way, the Good Food Institute is very interesting. I had donated some money to them because they were developing a meat that is actually real and doesn't contain or doesn't involve the killing of an animal. Meaning they're growing meat with real animal cells. And again, you don't have to kill the animal to do that. So the idea would be like you would buy it technically real meat, and the picture of the animal whose meat it came from or whose cells originally it came from would be on the package. Like, hey man, I survived. You're technically eating my genetic material, but I'm still possibly alive. I think that's really interesting, man. I don't know, and there's going to be a huge debate about that, right? Whether or not it's actually vegan, plus all the information about animal proteins not being super healthy for you. I still think it's probably a better idea to go fully plant-based, just for personal health reasons. But man, that's that one's confusing, right? That one's really confusing. But in either case, so the Good Food Institute says, again, 41% of US households now buy vegan milk. Now that doesn't exclude them from also buying regular milk too. So there could be households that are buying vegan milk and regular milk. But possibly they're just buying the vegan milk. And actually, as a bit of an aside, I like to make milk out of cashews. Now, I know there's some information out there right now about inflammation in cashews. I'm not up on that, and I probably should be. But in terms of taste, I'm just talking about taste right now. If you boil a cup of raw cashews for 10-15 minutes, and then you put that cup into a blender, and you add about 3 to 3.5 cups of water and just the smallest amount of salt, just a little bit of salt, and you blend that up for a minute. If you have a Vitamix, it's definitely worth it. But if you blend it so that you don't even need to strain it if you have a Vitamix, you just blend it up. Dude, that is some of the best milk, any kind of milk I've ever had. There's no additives to it. There's no preservatives. There's no gums. You know, the picture here is silk. I wonder, you know, what percentage of that milk is actually the nut? You know what I mean? Because if I make my own cashew milk, it's more expensive than buying cashew milk or almond milk at the store. Now, of course, there's economies of scale and all these things, but how do they do that, man? How do they do that? Is it fillers? I always wonder about that. And so whenever I can, in fact, recently I've been using nut butter to make milk because it's a little bit cheaper. It doesn't taste as good, but it is a little bit cheaper than buying the raw nuts themselves and then grinding them up and blending it and doing all that. But I'm telling you, man, if you just boil the cashews, 1 cup of cashews, 3 to 3.5 cups of water, blend it, a little bit of salt. Oh, amazing. Have that in your cereal, in your vegan cereal, huh? All right, back over here. So what else is the Good Food Institute saying? U.S. plant-based egg sales soar by 192%, dude. It's a lot. So the subtitle is plant-based foods have significantly outpaced overall grocery sales increases for 3 years running. So if you read further into this, and by the way, this is, I believe, a photo of Just Egg. Their product is awesome. Now, it's not exactly perfect, but it uses mung bean protein isolate as one of its key ingredients. And Sarah and I can't wait to get our hands on some of that because we think it's going to be, as far as the egg is concerned, one of the best ways to make a fake egg. So if you haven't tried Just Egg, and also there's another article on this website about them lowering their price, I believe, to $4.99, or maybe even lower than that, because they've just sold a ton. They're the guys who are selling the most. They're apparently, I read through it, apparently they're only second in the liquid egg category to regular egg beaters. So the second most bought liquid egg product is a vegan one. Isn't that amazing? Go try it if you haven't tried it. We're not sponsored by any of these companies I've just mentioned, so we're not taking any money from them, so don't worry about that. Worth a try. So here's what I was getting at earlier, and Sarah and I have actually invested some of our own personal money in a company called Beyond Meat. You've probably heard of them. They have arguably the best plant-based burger on the market. At least that's what I believe. Impossible Burger has an option. I don't know if it's gluten-free yet, but right out of the gate, the Beyond Burger was gluten-free. It was essentially, what would you say, hypoallergenic. And they've changed their product to make it even less processed, which is great. And it tastes even better now. But we've invested part of our own personal income into Beyond Meat. And so a couple days ago, it dawned on me to check out, well, who owns Beyond Meat? Who has invested in Beyond Meat? And it turns out that, as you can see in this list here, Tyson Foods had invested, I believe, let me pull up my notes, I believe it was 2016, October in 2016, Tyson Foods bought into Beyond. Now, they've since sold their shares. They had 6.5% of the company. They sold in April of 2019, so they don't currently own any of Beyond Meat, any portion of their company. But Tyson Foods, they have roughly 33% market share in the meat industry. They're a big player, man. So again, it comes back to the question we were talking about before. And the question is, should you buy products if they potentially bolster the profits of companies who are not vegan? And again, it's a real personal thing. And also, I still agree now that you do have to buy these products, even if it's going to give profits to a company that doesn't practice vegan practices. Because you have to vote with your dollar. You have to tell the marketplace in a broader sense, just like electric cars or hybrid cars, you have to tell the marketplace what you're willing to buy. It's no different in my opinion, than voting in a political race, you know? In the US right now, currently, it's March of 2020, there's a lot of people talking about the Democratic ticket of, you know, who's going to be more of a viable choice to go up against Donald Trump. And the idea is hopefully that you're able to choose a candidate that you agree with most, not just who do you think is going to beat this other guy, right? Now, the good news is any candidate can take on the cause of any other candidate, and I think that's what we're starting to see. There's even some universal basic income happening from the Republican side, which is really interesting, to help support folks in this weird time where maybe they're home from work and they're not making much money. The US government is saying, we're going to send you $1,000. I don't know how often that's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to be a reoccurring monthly thing, but that's the idea on the table right now, which is, I think, a great idea. So that's coming from Republicans now. So the point is, if you're trying to live a plant-based vegan lifestyle, should you support, in a roundabout way, companies who don't necessarily always promote those ideas themselves? And again, I think personally it's yes. I think it's yes because if the product itself is vegan, then you don't have to, but it's a good idea to vote for it by purchasing it. And not to say that eventually that will make that entire company vegan, but at least it might build up, you know, someone like in our case, might be doing some market research and see, wow, actually Tyson Foods sells some percentage of their food as vegan. That makes me more confident as a business owner to enter the space and offer another vegan option, whether it's protein, seasoning, chips, etc., whatever that might be. So, last thing I want to talk about is the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, has on their website, and if I'm doing this right, you should be able to see it up here, a whole list of diseases that have started because of farming animals. Now, it's apt to talk about this, and I really didn't want to, but we're dealing with something called the coronavirus right now. And apparently we've dealt with coronaviruses before. The common cold is also called a coronavirus. This is a new version. And the idea is that it's coming from the fact or the situation of raising and slaughtering animals for food, whether they be wild animals or animals bred for that specific reason in a farm setting, etc. So the CDC has a list of all the different human diseases that have come from this scenario. And I just want to walk through a couple of those right now, because someone who's living a vegan lifestyle could easily say, well, what if, this is another argument for a vegan lifestyle. Again, we're all humans first. That's our identity. Our identity is human. And if we're concerned with human health, wouldn't it make sense to look at human health in an unbiased way as possible? And again, the guy who's living the vegan lifestyle would say this, right? Because they've already transitioned to that and they believe in it. But wouldn't it make sense to just not do that in the first place? Wouldn't it make sense to just not hold captive and slaughter animals for food in the first place? Now, I said it at the beginning, I don't know if that's possible. And I'm not advocating for tomorrow everybody stop farming animals. And I know a lot of people's livelihoods are based on farming and slaughtering animals. Generation after generation after generation. I'm looking out the window right now, and maybe you can see here. There's a farm right down the street from where we live. Right down the street. And in fact, whether the farms around us are farming plants or animals, oftentimes we're kind of on the top of a hill. Oftentimes when we walk outside, you can get a whiff, a strong smell of animal manure. And they're spreading it with these big machines into a crop. Now look, I'm not a farmer. I'm not a farmer. I don't know exactly how it works. I don't know if what I'm saying is actually reasonable. I don't know if it's possible. What I do know is, on the CDC website, there's a list of a lot of diseases that have come from farming animals. Now, I'm not saying that it's not possible to get sick from eating plants. You know, you have a bird land on a plant, you have a bird, flying over the field, they drop their excrement on the plant. You don't wash the plant, you eat the plant. It's a great way to get sick. Okay, so I'm not saying just by eating plants there's no chance of getting sick. What I am saying is it might be possible to avoid a lot of human death and animal death, obviously, if we just didn't farm and slaughter animals. Is it reasonable? Is it possible based on the scale? You know, it's interesting. I brought this up to someone that I was working a farmer's market with, and he told me that Einstein and Stephen Hawking have both been quoted saying, if we at least transitioned, us being humans, to a vegetarian lifestyle, we could advance human civilization by some order of magnitude. And the reasoning would be that you're spending so much resource, water and food, on raising these animals and then slaughtering them and then getting the product from it. What if instead of spending those resources on the animals, what if you spent those resources directly on humans? What would happen? Einstein and Stephen Hawking, two of the smartest scientists that humankind have ever had. It's interesting, right? Because there would be a lot of math involved in making a statement like that. And I'm not saying that I 100% trust something that I haven't verified myself, but man, I'm curious now to look into that. So the CDC website, back to here, there's a list of diseases. Anthrax, that's the first one. And you can read all this stuff yourself. I'm just going to list them off. A lot of them are very hard to pronounce. Brucellosis, Brucella, I'm not sure exactly what that is. It's a bacterial disease caused by contact with infected animals and contaminated animal products like raw, unpasteurized dairy products like milk or cheese. Fair enough. Symptoms. People usually become sick within 2 to 4 weeks of exposure, but symptom onset can begin anywhere between 5 days to 6 months after exposure. Sick people have flu-like symptoms. Sometimes brucellosis, if that's how you say that, can become a chronic illness that can be difficult to treat and potentially lead to more severe health consequences. Occasionally, brucellosis can affect reproductive organs and cause miscarriage. Pretty serious stuff. This one, there's no way I'm going to be able to pronounce. Camp illobacteriosis. And again, you guys can read these if you want. Orf virus is the next one, sore mouth infection. Cryptosporidiosis. That sounds fun. That sounds like a fun one. Huh? Cryptosporidiosis. Maybe there's a grave involved. Who knows? E. coli. Now I get why they call it E. coli. Escherichia coli. E. coli. That's a pretty common one. Influenza. There you go, right? Coronavirus. That's exactly what we're talking about. Bird flu, right? More commonly. What else? Leptospirosis. Again, have no idea what that is. Listeriosis. MRSA. Q fever. Rabies. I've heard of that one. Ringworm. Salmonella. And that's where it stops. So again, this is the CDC website. And they're listing all of these diseases. But in more broad terms, you have mad cow disease, you have swine flu, you have SARS, you have bird flu, you have MERS, and you have the coronavirus. So wouldn't it make sense to take a look at the data and to stop farming animals? I think our society and a global society has to head that direction. I really do. I don't know if the math of raising animals works for the planet anymore. I'm sure there's tons of money in it. I get it. But if we're looking at what's best for everybody, I don't know that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I kind of ended it on a very dark note there. Maybe I'll put more footage of Bella up on the screen to do a nice little wash, just like they do on the news, right? Get little Bella up here to give us a smile. Again, we're sponsored by Hella Phat Vegan, hellaphatvegan.com, HELLAPHAT, vegan.com. Lots of good recipes on there, and they're all free, so check them out. And I wish you nothing but health and happiness for you personally, for the planet, for humans in general, and for animals. Thank you so much.